Okay, let's talk more about React. Specifically, I want to talk about React components, why we have them, what they are, and how it's sort of the core principle behind building a site with React. This is really how you can break your page up into little reusable components, and it really does help you organize your code, make things a lot easier to build. So I have here the basic site that you get when you use Create React App, the sort of basic scaffolding. And what I've done is I've gone in, I've added a nav section with some links, and then I've added a main area with a couple of sections with some articles inside of them. Let's take a look inside of the code here. So this is app.js. This is the starter page. I left the header as it is. This is what you get right out of the box with Create React App. I added nav, main, 2 sections. Each section has an H2 and some paragraphs. Inside of nav, I've got 4 links. Okay, I gave some class names to these things. Class names down here. And the orange color that we're getting here with the orange-red color on the hover effect, that's a little bit of CSS that I've added. Right here, this link.css. So I'm able to create a CSS file and import that so that when I use class names, it can come from that CSS file. Here it is. It's just the styles on those anchors. There's nothing really exciting, nothing really new or different about this. It's just plain old CSS. I'm just importing it. And I can use names here, which are going to be the same names as my components, which is one of those things that really helps you organize your content and organize your project. All right, I've got a nav, the links, the main down here. Now, what I've done is I've created a component for a story. This content right here, you'll notice this kind of repeats on the page. I want to take this and turn it into its own component so I can use it again and again. And then in the future, I'd pass data to it, and the data would be what comes up in the heading, what comes out in the story. But for now, I want a reusable component. So this section is what I'm choosing. I'm going to call it story. So I created a file called story.js. And this is what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to come in here and say story. And then I'm going to have another story. So now there should be 4 of these things. I've already built the file. I'm going to show you what it looks like, then we'll take a look at the file. Oh, yes. There's our error. And if we go to the command line where I'm running it, it's saying story is not defined. This error is because I've just written a component here. I've said, hey, give me a story and then give me another story. But React doesn't know what that is. So we have to come up here and import it. Import. Oops, just give the name story from, and then the file like this. Now here, you'll notice I don't have any path. I don't have a / in front of React. That's because React exists inside of my node modules folder. It was something that when I did Create React App, React was added to my project. If I look at my package.json, there's React. It's one of the node scripts. So if it's in node, or the node modules folder, all I have to do is this. If it's something that I've built, if it's sitting inside my source folder, or if I start creating other folders to organize my content, then I have to provide a path. So from app.js to story.js, I don't need the .js on the end. Here it is, story.js. So I'll save that. There, compiled successfully. Go back to the browser, and there it is. And I've got 4. See, I've got 4 of these stories. All I'm doing is repeating what I had in here. So let's take a look. There it is. This is the basic stuff that you need for a component. You're going to import React. Component, I prefer to do this inside the curly braces, so I'm extracting component from inside of React. If I left this off, I could do that. then I would have to say react.component. 6 one, half dozen of the other. Doesn't matter which way you do it, as long as you're consistent. Just pick a way that you like doing it and do it that way. You can see I imported story.css. So same name here. I'm getting some reuse out of this. Story.css, I just made the headings blue. I didn't have that previously. I don't know if you noticed or not, but the headings became blue. So we have the import for that. Import if we're bringing in any SVG graphics, or if we're bringing in some CSS, if we're going to be using other components inside here, I would import those at the top. We define class, give it a name. This name starts with a capital letter. That's the convention when you're writing classes. And this should be the same as your file name. Capital S, capital S, capital S. Extends component. So all of your code goes inside here. And at a bare minimum, you've got to have a render method inside of here. React component requires a render method to do anything. So render is going to return. We put our parentheses around here. We're using JSX, so I'm returning this whole object. And then export default story. This is the name right here, story. I have to do this. It's very common to forget to do this line, so if you find immediately, as soon as you run it, you got an error, check to make sure that you've got this line here. This is the thing that the import uses over here. If this is failing, chances are good you just forgot this line. All right, inside of return, we have our component. Now, I'm not doing anything special or fancy here. It's just the same content that I had back on app.js. If we look here, it's the exact same content. So we can now, because we're importing it, we can turn these all into just stories. Just like that. There we go. So I now should have 3 stories. If I jump back to the browser, yep, 3 stories. Blue headings because the CSS was being used. Now, let's take a look at the nav menu. Do the same sort of thing. All right, we have a nav component. Inside of that, we've got some anchors. Now, there's 2 ways I can do this. I can create a link component. I can do a nav component that it contains all of this, or I can break it up. So 3 ways. I can have a nav component, and then inside the nav component, I have 4 link components. So let's do that. Let's copy this content here, or cut it out, and I'm going to create a link. Or actually, I'm going to call this nav link. And I'm going to rename this one as well, just to be careful. I'm not using, oops, not delete. I want to rename that. I don't want to overwrite names of built-in components or anything like that. We'll talk about routers and links later on. But so nav link, that's what we've got, and now we need to build a new thing called navlink. So let's build a new component. So inside my source folder, same place as everything else, create a new file. I'm going to call it navlink.js, capitalized with a capital N. We import React, and we are going to import our component from React. Okay, that's bare minimum. That's what we need. Class navlink is the name, and it extends component. And just so we don't forget it, extends default navlink. Or not extends, sorry, exports. Inside here, we need our render method at an absolute minimum, and return. And then inside here, this is where we place all of that content. Okay, there we are, navlink. We've built it now. It's got the exact same content. We haven't done anything other than move it into here. We've got navlink. We're going to import navlink from navlink in the same folder. And I'm going to move this out of here because I don't want to weight down this file. I'm going to go into navlink.js and import the navlink CSS here where I'm actually going to be using it. Now, this brings the CSS into my web page. It's still going to work if I use it. Like if I take the class main link and I come up into here and I put it on something else, on one of the stories, it's still going to work. It's going to apply to that as well. It's just this way, the names keep them tied together. It's an organizational technique. So I know that I will always be doing this with this. It makes sense to do that. Okay, compiled properly. And there we are. We're still running properly. So we did our yarn start. We got it up and running. It's running the way we expect. Great. Now, turn each one of these into a link? Sure, why not? So copy that. I would come into the same folder, repeat this whole process. So, new file. I'm going to call it, I'll say main link. Nav link. I guess these should have been nav link. This one could have been nav menu. Yeah, let's do that. Let's rename it. Nav menu. Nav menu. Save that. Come back up to app. We're importing nav menu from nav menu. And instead of nav link, this is now nav menu. Save. Come back. Oh, cannot resolve nav menu. Oh, right. We have to rename these ones, don't we? Nav menu. Yeah, I'll leave nav link as it is because I'm going to use it with the link component. So nav menu importing nav link. Yes, okay. There we are. And we're back. Okay, so we've created a nav menu component which has a bunch of nav links inside of it. So let's copy this one. New file, navlink.js, import React, and we'll bring in our component from React. We could import our script here to navlink.css. We're using it in this component. Class navlink extends component. We need our render method. You can see that this process is just the same thing over and over. And you can actually copy one component over. You get a simple little component, you can just copy and paste it into the new files, and it will save you a bunch of time typing out the scaffolding. There we are, navlink, and there's a link. Now, when I use this back on the other page, when I import that, what's going to happen is all four of my links are going to end up as home with href home. So at this point, I'm losing a little bit of reusability. But what I'm going to be doing is another video. So we'll import that. I'm going to be doing another video on how to use props in React, and this is how you pass information from one to the next. And I'm going to be talking about how you can build, use the JavaScript vanilla array map method, and that's how we're going to do it. Instead of writing them all out like this, we're going to be using array.map to loop through and generate components, pass in data for these things. So navlink from /navlink. There we are. And we can get rid of these, or actually let's comment them out, because in the next video I'll talk about how to build a loop. Alright, so we're doing a JavaScript style comment. which means curly braces, and then these characters inside. There we go. There's my comment, and I'm going to just move that down like that. Okay, so we have a functional thing. All the links are the same, but we've built components. We've built a nav menu component, a nav link component, and a story component. So I will make copies of those as code gists for nav menu, nav link, and story, and my app.js. So those 4 files I will put as code gists and put them in the description as a link for you to download and take a look at. Hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.